The city of Vaynor was full of lights, yet the streets felt dark. Shadows stretched across the stone walls, and the rain never seemed to end. On a small corner, 3 alien widows stood close together, holding each other's arms. Their clothes were worn, their eyes were tired, and their voices were weak. They were once wives of strong men, but war had taken everything from them. Now they were alone, left only with hunger and fear. In this city, widows were not respected. People saw them as a curse, as bad luck, as mouths that could not give anything back, one by one. The widows knocked on shop doors. "Please, we just need a job," they whispered. But the shopkeepers frowned. Some slammed the door, others shouted at them to go away. "Widows bring trouble," one man said. "They eat food but give nothing," another woman added. The 3 widows walked away, their heads bent low, their hearts breaking again and again. The youngest widow, Lyra, had golden eyes that still carried a little hope. She whispered, "Maybe the next shop will help us." The oldest widow, Sarah, shook her head, her voice heavy with pain. "No one wants us, not here, not anywhere." The third widow, Mela, tried to stay silent, but tears rolled down her cheeks. The city was loud with markets, voices, and laughter, but around the widows it was silent. People stared at them, whispered, and moved aside. As if the widows were ghosts walking through the crowd, every step they took felt heavier. Every look cut them deeper. Still, they walked, because what else could they do? Hunger was burning inside their stomachs, and cold rain was biting their skin. Night was falling. The lamps began to glow, and the streets grew emptier. The widows found a broken bench near the river and sat down together. They did not speak because words had lost their power. The sound of the river was the only answer to their silent cries. In their hearts, memories returned. Lyra saw her husband's smile when he promised to come back from the war. Sarah remembered her partner's hands building their home brick by brick. Mela could still hear the voice of her beloved singing to her before sleep. But all of those voices were now gone, taken away by fire, battle, and time. And now, the world wanted to take away even their dignity. "Why does no one want us?" Lyra whispered into the night. Sarah touched her hand and said, "Because they fear what they do not understand." Mela looked at the stars above and whispered, "Maybe even the stars have turned their eyes from us." As they sat in silence, something shifted in the shadows. At first, they thought it was just the wind. But no, someone was watching them. A tall figure stood across the street, half hidden under the dark roof. The rain fell over him, but he did not move. He only stared. The widows felt their hearts race. Was it danger? Was it another man ready to throw stones or cruel words? They held each other tighter, fear running through their veins. "Don't look at him," Sarah whispered, but Lyra could not stop staring. She felt something strange in his gaze, not hate, not pity, but something else. The figure stepped forward, slow and careful. The widows held their breath, ready to run, but he stopped just a few steps away. The lamps above showed his face, pale skin, sharp eyes, and something rare in this city. He was human. The widows froze. Humans were not trusted in Vaynor. Most people feared them. Most people hated them. What would a human want with 3 broken alien widows? The silence grew heavy. Every drop of rain sounded louder. Then the human spoke, his voice calm, deep, and strange. "I have been watching you," he said. "You ask for work, but no one listens. No one helps." The widows stared at him, unsure if this was kindness or a cruel trick. Sarah's voice shook as she answered, "Why do you care? You are not one of us." The human looked at her with steady eyes and said, "Because I know what it feels like to be unwanted." The widows did not answer. They only exchanged nervous glances. Could this man be trusted, or was he another wolf hiding in a mask? Lyra's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a spark, of something new, something like hope. The human stepped closer. "I can give you work," he said softly, "but you must decide if you can trust me." The widows stared at him, frozen between fear and need. The rain kept falling. The river kept flowing. The night grew darker. And in that moment, 3 alien, Widows stood at the edge of a choice that would change everything. Would they walk away again, back into the shadows of pain, or would they follow the human into a future unknown? The answer was not yet given, but the story of the 3 widows and the 1 human had just begun. The rain had stopped, but the streets of Vaynor still shined wet under the pale lamps. The 3 widows stood in silence, their hearts heavy, their minds full of questions. Before them was the human, tall and calm, his eyes steady even as the cold air pressed around them. They did not know if they should run or if they should listen. Sarah, the oldest widow, stepped forward with a trembling voice. "What do you want from us?" she asked, her words sharp with fear. The human did not move closer, but his voice carried warmth. "I want nothing from you. I only offer work." The widow stared confused. Work was the word they had begged to hear all day, yet now it felt strange. Why would a human, an outsider, help them when their own people would not? Mela pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders, whispering, "It is a trap, it must be." Lyra's golden eyes searched his face, but she found no cruelty there, only something heavy, something real. The human lowered his head slightly, as if he understood their fear. "My name is Aaron," he said. "I run a small workshop near the river's edge. I need hands, not strong hands, just willing ones." His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Sarah narrowed her eyes, her voice bitter. "And if we say yes, what then? Will you throw us away like garbage when the town grows angry?" Aaron's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "The town already hates me for being human," he said. "Working with you will change nothing." For me, the widows fell silent. It was true. Humans were distrusted, treated as strangers in Vaynor. Perhaps he understood their loneliness better than anyone else. Still, fear gnawed at them. Aaron glanced at the broken bench where they sat, the water stains on their clothes, the pain in their faces. He sighed softly, and his words came slow, heavy with honesty. "You can refuse me," he said. "I will not chase you, but hunger will not wait for another chance." The widows exchanged glances. Lyra's eyes shimmered with a fragile hope. Mela's lips trembled as she whispered, "If it is a trick, we will lose everything." Sarah, who had lost the most, spoke, firmly, "We already have nothing left to lose." For a long moment the night stood still. Then Aaron turned, walking a few steps down the road. He did not look back, but his voice echoed, "If you want to live, come at dawn. Follow the smoke from the chimney by the river." The widows stood frozen, the echo of his words sinking deep inside them. Should they follow, or should they hide? The choice pressed on their hearts like a heavy stone. That night the widows found no rest. They huddled together in a small abandoned shed, their bodies cold, their minds restless. The fire they lit was weak and the wind howled through the broken walls. Every crack of wood sounded like danger. Every shadow looked like betrayal. Sarah sat awake, staring at the dim flame. Her mind replayed Aaron's words again and again. Could a human, a stranger, really see them as more than curses? Her heart wanted to believe, but her fear was stronger. Mela dreamed of her husband's voice, but in the dream his face turned into Aaron's. She woke with a start, shivering, whispering, "We cannot trust him." Yet deep inside, she knew her hunger and sorrow left no other road. Lyra pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her heart race. Hope scared her more than despair, because hope meant another chance to be broken. Still, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I will go." When dawn came, the city was quiet, covered in a pale mist. The widows walked together, slow and uncertain, their steps echoing on the wet stones. The smell of smoke guided them just as Aaron had promised. It rose from a small building by the river, plain and worn, but alive with warmth. As they reached the door, they hesitated. Every beat of their hearts screamed with doubt. Then the door opened and Aaron stood there, holding simple tools in his hands. He looked at them not with pity but with the calm eyes of a man ready to share his burden. "You came," he said quietly, almost with relief. Lyra nodded, though her hands shook. "We came," she whispered, "but do not betray us." Aaron stepped aside. letting the morning light fall across the room inside. "You will see for yourselves," he said. Inside, the smell of wood, iron, and bread filled the air. A place of work, a place of life, a place where the widows might begin again. They stepped through the doorway, each with fear, each with hope. None of them knew what waited beyond that threshold. But one truth became clear. This human was different, and their story, once full only of pain, was about to change. The morning sun rose slowly over the misty river. Its pale light touched the small workshop where Aaron, the human, waited. The widows stood outside the door, their hands cold, their hearts racing. This was their first day of work, but also their first step into something unknown. Lyra looked at the wooden door with nervous eyes. Her mind whispered, "What if it is a trick?" Mela held Sarah's arm, her body tense with fear. Sarah kept her face hard. Though inside she too carried doubt, Aaron opened the door with a calm smile. "You came," he said, as if he had not been sure they would. The widows stepped inside, slowly, their feet heavy as if the ground itself resisted them. The workshop smelled of wood and iron. Tables were covered with half-finished chairs, broken tools, and old baskets. It was not a place of riches, but a place of honest work. A small fire burned in the corner, giving warmth to the cold air. Aaron handed each of them something simple. To Lyra, he gave a basket to repair. To Mela, he gave cloth to clean. To Sarah, he gave tools to sort. "Do not fear mistakes," he said softly. "Only fear giving up." The widows exchanged looks. No one had spoken to them with patience for a long time. No one had trusted them with even the smallest task. Their hands trembled as they began their work. At first, silence filled the room, broken only by the scrape of wood and the crack of fire. Lyra tried to weave the basket tighter, but her hand slipped. She bit her lip, ready for scolding, but Aaron only said, "Good, now try again." The gentleness in his tone made her chest ache. Mela wiped the dust from the shelves, her mind replaying the insults she had heard in the city. "You are useless, you are cursed," the voices echoed. But here, the dust left her cloth, and the shelves began to shine. She felt something new. Usefulness. Sarah, sorting tools, noticed, her hands shaking less as she worked. She glanced at Aaron, who was busy cutting wood, his muscles moving with steady rhythm. For the first time in years, she felt as if someone respected her presence. Still, she whispered to herself, "This cannot last." Hours passed slowly, but the widows kept working. Sweat mixed with the morning chill. Hunger twisted in their stomachs. Then Aaron placed bread and a jug of water on the table. "Eat," he said. "You cannot work on empty stomachs." The widows stared at the food, their eyes wide. It was simple bread, but to them it looked like a feast. They ate with trembling hands, each bite filling not just their bodies but their hearts. Aaron ate with them, sharing as if they were equals. But outside, not everyone was silent. From the street, sharp whispers drifted in through the cracked window. "Look, the human feeds them," a voice sneered. "Traitor, siding with widows," another hissed. The widows froze, fear tightening their throats. Aaron heard it too, but his face did not change. He simply said, "Ignore the noise, this place is stronger than their hate." The widows wanted to believe, yet their hearts trembled with doubt. As the day went on, neighbors passed by the workshop. Peering in with angry eyes, one man spat on the ground, another scratched a mark on the wall. The widows felt the weight of those stares pressing down on them. Still, Aaron kept them busy, giving them tasks, teaching them little by little. By evening, the workshop looked different. The shelves were clean, the baskets tighter, the tools neatly set. The widows stood back, staring at the small changes, for the first time in years they felt proud of something they had done. Aaron looked at their work and nodded. "Well done," he said. "This is only the beginning." His words carried more strength than gold. They were like water to dry lips. But just as peace began to settle, a sharp sound broke it. Someone outside had slammed a rock against the door. The widows gasped. Mela clutched her chest on the door. A rough mark appeared, Red paint shaped like a warning sign. Sarah's face went pale. She knew what it meant. "It is a curse sign," she whispered. "They want us gone." The widow's heart sank. Their small hope threatened once more. Aaron stood before the door, his hand firm on the wood. His eyes were hard now, but his voice remained calm. "Do not be afraid," he said. "They cannot scare truth away." The widows gathered close, their bodies shaking. The fire inside the workshop flickered as if it too felt the fear. Outside, footsteps faded, but the threat remained. The widows looked at Iran, waiting for him to turn them away. But instead, he said, "Tomorrow we work again." The widows shared a silent glance, their fear deep, but their trust beginning to grow. They did not know what storms would come, but they knew this. Together with this human, they had taken their first step into a new life. The night fell heavy over Vayner. The red sign on the door glowed under the moonlight, a promise of danger to come. And inside the workshop, 3 widows sat by the fire, holding hope like a fragile flame, a flame that others wanted to crush, but a flame that refused to die. Morning light crept across the streets of Vayner, but the workshop did not wake to peace. Aaron opened his door only to find the red curse sign painted larger, brighter, and crueler. The wooden steps were stained with mud, and broken glass lay scattered across the ground. The 3 widows stood behind him, their faces pale, their hearts sinking with fear. "This is because of us," Mela whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah shook her head, though her eyes carried guilt. "No," she said. "It is because people fear what they cannot control." Lyra clutched her shawl tighter, her golden eyes filled with sorrow. "Maybe we should leave before worse comes," she whispered. Aaron turned to face them, his expression hard but calm. "You will not leave," he said. "This is your work now, your place." The widows stared at him, shocked. "You would risk your home for us?" Sarah asked. Aaron's answer was simple. "A home is nothing if it has no truth inside it." Those words sank deep into the widows' hearts. No one had ever spoken to them like that still. The fear of the city pressed heavy on their shoulders. That day they worked again, their hands steadying little by little. But every sound outside made them jump. Every shadow on the window made them tremble. Neighbors passed by with sharp eyes, muttering under their breath, "Traitor human, cursed widows." Children were pulled away from the street as if the workshop carried a sickness. Inside, Iran pretended not to hear. He showed Lyra how to fix a wooden chair leg. He guided Mela's hand when weaving a basket. He praised Sarah's skill at sharpening tools. The widows felt their hearts warm, but they also felt the eyes of hate pressing in from every side. By evening, the workshop looked alive. The fire burned brighter. The shelves were filled. The air smelled of wood and bread. The widows felt pride again, but the moment did not last. When Aaron closed the shop for the night, he found a dead crow nailed to the door, its wings spread, wide, blood dripping onto the wood. The widows gasped. Lyra covered her mouth. Mela began to cry. Sarah's voice cracked. "They want us to fear death itself." Aaron's face darkened, but he pulled the crow down with steady hands. He buried it in the earth without a word. When he returned, his voice was low but strong. "They want us weak, but we will not give them that victory." That night, the widows gathered around the fire in the corner of the workshop. They shared stories they had not spoken in years. Lyra told of her husband's laughter, a sound she thought she had forgotten. Mela whispered about the lullabies her beloved used to sing. Sarah, her voice steady but sad, spoke of the day she built a home with her partner brick by brick. Tears filled their eyes, but the warmth of memory softened their pain. Aaron listened in silence, his eyes thoughtful. When they finished, he said, "Pain can crush you, or it can shape you into stone. You must choose what you will become, other." Widows looked at him, their hearts heavy, but for the first time they felt like someone understood. They felt less like shadows and more like living souls. But peace did not last long. As midnight came, footsteps gathered outside, the sound of Angry whispers, the crunch of boots on gravel. The widows froze, holding each other tightly. "Aaron," Sarah whispered. "They are here." Aaron stood, his body tense but steady. "Stay inside," he said firmly. "Do not open the door." The voices outside grew louder. "Human, give them up," someone shouted. "They are curses, they bring death." Another voice cried. The sound of rocks striking the walls filled the night. Windows rattled, the fire flickered. Mela clung to Lyra, her body shaking. "Why does he risk himself for us?" she whispered. Lyra, though afraid, whispered back, "Because he is not like them." Suddenly a stone smashed through the window. Glass shattered across the floor. The widows screamed. The firelight danced wildly. Sarah rushed to block the window with her body protecting the others. But Aaron stepped forward, his voice booming into the night. "You will not enter," he shouted. "You will not break what is mine." The mob outside hissed and cursed, but none dared to break through the door. Still their voices filled the air with hate, promising worse to come. At last their footsteps faded. The night grew quiet again, but the silence was heavy, a silence filled with warning. The widows sat together by the dying fire, their eyes wide with fear. Sarah spoke first, her voice low. "They will not stop," she said. "Tomorrow they will return stronger." Mela wept quietly, rocking back and forth. Lyra stared into the ashes, her voice trembling but firm. "Then tomorrow we must be stronger too." Aaron stood near the door, his hand pressed against the wood where the crow's blood had once been. His face was shadowed, his eyes hard, he whispered to himself, though the widows could still hear. "They think they can break us with fear, but fear will not rule here." The widows looked at him, and in that moment they knew this human was not just their employer, he was their shield, their ally, their only hope in a world that wanted them gone. But outside, in the silent dark, the people of Vayner were not finished. They planned, they waited, their hate burning like fire under ash. The storm was not over. It was only just beginning. The night was heavy, and the air felt thick. With silence inside the workshop, the widows sat close to the fire, but the warmth did not reach their hearts. They could still hear the voices from earlier, the shouts, the curses, the sound of stones against the walls. Fear clung to them like a shadow that refused to leave. Aaron moved around the workshop, checking the windows and the door. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a storm. He knew the mob would not give up, not while the widows remained under his roof. The widows watched him, their hearts torn between gratitude and fear. Sarah whispered, "We are the reason they hate you. If we go, you will be safe." Aaron turned to her sharply, his voice firm. "No, you are not the reason. Their hate was already waiting for a target." His words carried strength, but the widows saw the tiredness in his eyes. The hours passed. Midnight turned to deep night. The widows tried to rest, but every creak of the wood, every gust of wind, felt like danger. Then it came. Distant footsteps, many of them, heavy and certain. The widows sat up at once, their bodies stiff with dread. The sound grew louder, voices followed, angry and sharp. "Bring them out," a man shouted. "Let the curses burn," another voice cried. The mob had returned, larger, fiercer, filled with hate. Aaron moved to the door, his body blocking it. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low and steady. The widows huddled together, their eyes wide, their hands clutching each other tightly. The first rock slammed against the wall. Then another. Glass shattered, wood splintered. The workshop shook with every strike. The widows screamed, fear choking their throats, but Aaron stood firm, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You will not enter here," he roared. The mob answered with laughter, cruel and sharp. "You cannot protect them forever, human," someone shouted. "We will tear this place down," another voice growled. The sound of axes and hammers struck the air, each blow filled with threat. Inside, the widows trembled. Mela buried her face in her hands, whispering prayers. Sarah clenched, her fists, anger rising inside her chest. Lyra's golden eyes burned with tears, but also with a spark of courage. When a stone flew through the window and struck near Aaron, Lyra could not stay silent. She stood, her voice shaking but strong. "Leave him alone," she cried, her voice carrying through the broken window. "He protects us when none of you would." The mob roared with laughter, cruel and merciless. "A widow dares to speak," one man sneered. "Burn them all." Another shouted. Aaron pulled Lyra back gently, his eyes full of warning. "You must not let them see your fear," he said. "But you must not throw yourself into their fire either." The attack grew louder, wood cracking under blows, stones crashing against the door. The widows cried out as the walls shook. Aaron braced the door with his shoulder, his body straining against the force. "Stay back," he commanded, his breath heavy. Then came the sharp sound of fire. The mob had lit torches, their glow flashing through the cracks in the wall. Smoke curled into the air, the smell of burning filled the widows' lungs. Panic surged, their bodies shook, but Aaron did not move. "You want me," he shouted to the mob, "but you will not take them." His words cut through the smoke, but the crowd only grew louder. The widows, unable to watch him stand alone, stepped forward together. Sarah's voice rose, strong despite her fear. "If you want to hurt us, you must face us too." The mob hesitated for a moment, surprised by the courage of the widows, but their anger quickly returned. Shouts filled the night. "Then you will all fall together," they cried. The door shuddered under the weight of the attack. Aaron gritted his teeth, his muscles trembling. The widows pressed their hands against the door too, their strength small but their will fierce. Together they held it, their fear turning into defiance. But then a stone struck Aaron's head. He stumbled, blood running down his temple, his knees buckling. The widows screamed, rushing to catch him. "Aaron!" Mila cried, her voice breaking. Aaron fell against them, his body heavy, his breath uneven. "Still," he whispered, his voice weak but steady. "Do not let them win." The widows held him, their tears falling, their hearts burning with both fear and anger. The mob outside cheered, thinking victory was near. But inside, 3 widows knelt beside a wounded human. For the first time, they realized something. This man was not just their employer, not just a protector. He had become their family. The attack raged on, but the widows no longer trembled the same way. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with a fire stronger than fear. If the mob wanted to destroy them, they would not bow. They would fight for the man who had given them hope. The night of the attack had begun, and it would leave none of them unchanged. The workshop smelled of smoke and blood. The fire outside had died down, but the echoes of the mob still haunted the walls. Inside, Aaron lay on the floor, his head bleeding, his face pale. The widows knelt beside him, their hands shaking, their hearts pounding with fear. "Aaron, stay with us," Lyra whispered, pressing cloth against his wound. Mela sobbed, rocking back and forth. "This is our fault. They hurt him because of us." Sarah clenched her jaw, trying to keep steady. "No, this is their hate, not ours, but we must act quickly." Aaron opened his eyes for a moment, his gaze weak but steady. "You must choose," he whispered, his voice broken. "Save yourself or stand with me." Then his eyes closed again, his breath shallow, his body still. The widows froze, his words striking like lightning in their hearts. For the first time, the choice was theirs, not forced by others, not decided by fate. Would they leave him behind to escape the wrath of the city, or would they stay and fight for the man who had given them hope? Sarah's hands trembled as she pressed her palm to Aaron's chest, feeling the faint rise and fall of his breath. "He is still alive," she whispered, "but not for long if we do nothing." Her voice was hard, but her eyes shone with fear. Mela shook her head, tears streaming. "If we stay, they will kill us all. The mob will return stronger, angrier." Her words cracked with panic, her body ready to flee. But then she looked at Aaron's pale face and her heart twisted. He had risked everything. For them, could she run and leave him to die? Lyra's golden eyes burned with determination. "He gave us work when no one else would. He gave us food. He gave us dignity," she said. "If we leave now, then we are nothing more than the shadows they call us." Her voice shook, but her courage glowed like a flame in the dark. The widows argued, fear clashing with hope, despair battling with loyalty. Every word felt like a blade, every second heavier than the last. Finally, Sarah stood tall, her voice steady. If we run, we will die anyway. Maybe not by their hands, but by hunger, by shame. But if we stay, at least we fight for something. At least we fight for him. The others fell silent, her words sinking deep. Slowly, Mela wiped her tears, nodding with shaky breath. You are right, she whispered. I cannot run. Not when he stayed for us. The decision was made. They would not leave Iran. They would stand with him no matter the cost. Together they lifted him, carrying his weight across the room. His blood stained their hands. His breath came weak, but he was alive. They placed him on a bed of cloth in the corner, covering him with blankets. Mela pressed her hand against his forehead, whispering prayers. Lyra cleaned his wound as best as she could with water and herbs. Sarah stood guard near the door, her body tense, her ears sharp for every sound outside. The night dragged on, heavy and cruel. Every creak made their hearts race. Every gust of wind felt like another attack. But the mob did not return, at least, not yet. The widows sat in silence, watching over Aaron, their minds filled with both fear and fire. At dawn, the city guards came, their armor clinking, their faces cold. They had heard the noise of the night. They had seen the fire and the crowd. But instead of helping, they pointed at the widows. You three are the cause, one guard said. Cursed widows, bringing chaos to Vayner. Another spat. The widows stood in shock, their voices trembling. It was not us, Lyra cried. It was the mob. They attacked, they tried to kill us. But the guards only sneered. Enough lies, you poisoned this human with your curse. He bleeds because of you. The guards demanded they leave with them to face the council of the city. Fear struck their hearts, but Sarah stepped forward, her back straight, her voice steady. We will not abandon him, she said firmly. If you take us, you take him too. The guards laughed, but their laughter carried unease. They did not want to touch Aaron, not while blood marked his skin. Finally, they gave a warning. Tomorrow, the council will decide your fate, widows, and his as well. Then they left, their footsteps echoing like a final judgment. The widows collapsed beside Aaron, their bodies weak, their souls heavy. They had chosen to stay, but now the choice carried a price they could not escape. Tomorrow, their lives would be judged by a council that already hated them. Aaron stirred, his lips parting, his voice barely, a whisper. Do not let them win, he repeated, his words broken but full of fire. The widows held his hands, their tears falling onto his skin, and in that moment they swore silently. No matter what the council said, no matter what the city demanded, they would not abandon him. They would not abandon each other. The decision was made, and it would change everything. The morning sky over Vayner was heavy with clouds. The streets buzzed with whispers as the three widows walked side by side, supporting Aaron's weak body between them. The human's steps were slow, his head still bandaged, his face pale, but his eyes were alive. Behind them, the crowd gathered, eager to see their shame, eager to see their punishment. The guards led them into the great hall where the council of the city sat. Tall chairs lined the stone floor, and torches burned with harsh light. At the center, the council leader rose, his voice sharp as iron. Widows of Vayner, he declared, you bring curses upon our city, and you bring this human into our troubles. The crowd roared in agreement, their voices rising like a storm. Send them away, some shouted. Make them pay, others cried. The widows trembled, but they did not step back. Sarah stood tall, her voice carrying across the hall. We did not bring curses, we only asked for work, she said, her tone steady. Your people gave us nothing but hate, yet this human gave us a chance to live. Her words struck the air, silencing a few voices, but many still jeered. Mela, though her hands shook, stepped forward too. When they attacked, he stood in front of us. He bled for us, she cried. If that is a curse, then perhaps your city has forgotten what true kindness is. Her tears glistened in the torchlight, but her courage shone, brighter, Lyra looked at the faces of the crowd, their eyes filled with hate, and she felt her heart race. She knew fear could still crush them, but she also knew silence would destroy them forever. So she lifted her chin, her golden eyes burning. "You call us curses," she said, her voice strong, "but we are not shadows, we are not ghosts. We are widows, yes, but we are also workers, mothers, sisters, and we are alive. Judge us if you must. But remember, when you turned your backs, a stranger gave us dignity that our own people would not." The hall fell silent for a breath, the power of her words sinking deep. Even the council members shifted uneasily in their seats. Aaron, leaning weakly against Sarah, raised his head, his voice quiet but firm. "They fear what they do not understand," he said. "But fear cannot build a city, only trust can." The leader's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "You speak well, human, but your words do not erase danger. Your presence with these widows has brought fire and unrest." Aaron's lips curved into a faint smile despite his weakness. "Unrest does not come from them," he said. "It comes from the hate that you feed." The crowd murmured, some angry, some thoughtful. For the first time, doubt began to stir among them. A woman in the crowd shouted, "They worked. I saw the baskets, I saw the chairs, their hands are not cursed," a man added. "And the human shop looked better than before, perhaps he is right." Whispers spread like ripples in water, breaking the wall of hate little by little. The council leader raised his hand, silencing the hall. He looked at the widows with eyes still full of mistrust. "You are spared," he said finally, his voice reluctant. "But only because this human speaks for you. Do not forget. The city will be watching." The widows exhaled, relief and fear. Mixing inside them, they were not free, not yet. But they had broken through a wall that seemed impossible to move. The guard stepped aside, and slowly the crowd began to leave, some muttering curses, others whispering in wonder. Outside the hall, the widows stood together in the pale daylight. For the first time, people did not only stare with hate. Some stared with curiosity, even with respect. Children pointed at the baskets they carried, asking if they could buy one. A man nodded at Aaron with a quiet sign of honor. The widows felt their hearts lift, not high, not fully, but enough to breathe. Again they turned to Aaron, who leaned weakly against the wall. "You saved us," Mela whispered, tears in her eyes. Aaron shook his head, his voice soft. "No, you saved yourselves. You chose to stay when running was easier. You showed them your truth." Sarah placed her hand over his, her voice firm. "And we will keep showing it no matter what comes." As they walked back through the streets of Vaynor, the workshop waiting for them by the river, the widows felt something they had not felt in years. Not fear, not shame, but hope. The red curse mark on the door had faded, washed away by rain. The fire inside the workshop burned bright, not only with warmth but with a promise. The widows knew the road ahead would not be easy. Hate does not die in a single day. Mistrust does not vanish with one speech. But they also knew they were no longer alone. They had each other, and they had Aaron together. They had faced the storm. Together, they had survived. And together, they would build something new. Not just a workshop, not just a home, but a life where even broken souls could rise again. The widows looked at the human, their friend, their family, and in their hearts, one truth rang clear: change had begun, and nothing in Vaynor would ever be the same.